Hey there, welcome back to my channel. So today, you guys, we are doing a good, fun, old-fashioned labor and delivery story time. Wait, that didn't sound right. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So a couple of you guys have asked me about my labor and delivery story. So I figured I'd go ahead and make this video. Little man is currently down for a nap. As you know, I had a baby back in November. It is now February. My induction was scheduled on November 16th, so I spent November 15th, the day before, which was a Sunday, getting ready. Just doing those last minute things around the house, finishing, packing my bags, getting the animals ready, showing my dad what to do as far as taking care of the animals go. So that was Sunday the 15th, and I did not finish all that up until around 9 or 9:30. I laid down on this here couch, and about 30 minutes after laying down, I started feeling what felt like really strong, horrific menstrual cramps, to be honest. And at first I was thinking, God, is this a Braxton Hicks? Because my Braxton Hicks contraction sort of felt like that, but this was stronger than a regular Braxton Hicks contraction. And I had remembered from childbirth class that if you start to get a contraction and you're trying to figure out if it's a real contraction or a Braxton Hicks contraction, then do the opposite of what you're doing. So if you're lying down, then get up and walk around. If you're walking around, then get off of your feet, like sit down, lie down, whatever. Because when it comes to Braxton Hicks contractions, if it's a Braxton Hicks contraction, then doing the opposite will make it stop. So if you're on your feet, then get off of your feet, and if it stops, then that's a Braxton Hicks contraction. If that contraction keeps going and you keep getting more contractions, then it's a real contraction. Which I don't know why they call one Braxton Hicks contraction and the other one real contractions. So let me tell you, them Braxton Hicks contractions, those bitches are real. So all these people that are out there like, that's not a real contraction. Yes, it is. I did the opposite action. I got up and moved around on my feet a little bit. Those contractions did not go away. They kept coming. And so at one point I had to go to the bathroom naturally, because when you are 40 weeks, I was 40 weeks at that point. When you are 40 weeks pregnant, you pee what feels like 57 times an hour. So I went back to the bathroom, and when I went, I found my bloody show. And I feel a little awkward talking about my bodily fluids, or at least I'm sure I've talked about other bodily fluids on here. No, I don't think I ever have. But yeah, when you talk about bodily fluids that come out of your lady parts, it's a bit awkward, especially when you're putting it out there for everyone to see. So anyway, bear with me here. So of course, I'm thinking back to childbirth class again. And in childbirth class, I learned that your bloody show is usually pinkish in color, and mine was not. Mine was bright red. And, I'm trying to stay calm, because in my mind, I'm thinking, God, am I really in labor? And what is this that's in my underwear? And, I'm just freaking out a little bit, but I'm trying to stay calm. So I did what I never should have done. I Googled it. Big mistake. So when I Googled it, of course, Google was saying, oh, well, your bloody show can be bright red if it's placenta previa, which I knew I didn't have. And they said that it could be, or it could also be placental abruption. And placental abruption is, of course, when your placenta tears or detaches from your uterus. I don't know why I'm giving you guys hand signals. But of course, when it detaches from your uterus, you essentially cut off the blood and oxygen supply from your baby. And placental abruption can be an emergency. Is an emergency situation. You need to get in, have a C-section, before anything bad happens to the baby. And so this is going through my mind, and I'm having having contractions while this is going through my mind. So I pick up the phone and I call the after hours line for my doctor's office. And I know that I sounded like Ross from Friends. Like, I don't know if there's anybody else that watches Friends as much as I do. Well, I take that back. My friend Marcy watches it even more. But, you know, that episode in which Joey and Rachel tell Ross that they're dating each other, and Ross is trying to be fine. He's like, I'm fine. But he's obviously not. He's like, I'm fine. You know, me, I'm fine. I'm doing a horrible impression of it. But anyway, if you watch Friends, then you know what I'm talking about, and that is exactly what I sounded like. That was me in that moment. So I called the after hours line, and I'm telling the guy who answers, like, so this is what's happening, and I'm fine, and I'm calm, but what should I do? And I thought I'd just, you know, reach out and see what the doctor says, but I'm fine. Oh, so bad. So he says, okay, well, you know, don't worry about it. I will get in touch with the on-call physician, and I will have them give you a call back. That was a point in which I picked up the phone and called my mom. So my mom, I knew she was going up to work that Sunday to try to finish up a lot of stuff so that she could be off on Monday. She could sleep in, pack a bag, come over to my house because my induction wasn't scheduled till 8 p.m. So she could come over to my house and, you know, we could hang out, pack things up in the car and go, you know, whatever. And then she had planned on being off like those first 2 weeks with me. So, you know, she was wrapping everything up at work. I had the feeling she was going to still be at her office at that time, because by the time that this was all happening, it was like 11:30, close to midnight. So I pick up the phone and I call my mom. And I said, Mom, are you still at the office? And she immediately goes in a freak out mode, which if you know my mom, you can only imagine. She's like, yes. Why? What's going on? Are you having a baby? Are you in labor? And like, you know, she just like spitting things out. And finally I'm like, Mom, calm down. I think I'm having contractions. I think I found my bloody show. But I'm not exactly sure. Since this is the first time. Sorry, I'm just looking down here because this is where the monitor is, and he started moving. So, you know, I told her I put in a call. I'm just waiting to hear back from the nurse practitioner. So she says, okay, well, I'm going home. I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna get home, and I'm gonna go home. And I'm like, Mom, I know you're going home. Like, spit it out. She's like, I'm gonna pack up a bag, and I'm coming over there. So, yeah, we hung up. And not even 2 minutes later, the nurse practitioner from my doctor's office calls, and she says, well, you know, based on like what you're telling me, it sounds like your body is going into labor, because that sounds like a bloody show. If it were a placental abruption, you would be dealing with some other symptoms, and it would be a lot more like blood than what you found. So, you know, doesn't sound like placental abruption. But, you know, here's what I want you to do. She basically put me on a 2-hour time clock. She said, in the next 2 hours, if those contractions get stronger and they get closer together, or if you bleed more, so if the bleeding doesn't stop and it gets heavier, then I want you to go ahead and go into the hospital. However, if, you know, the contractions slow down, or, you know, they weaken a little bit, or if that blood tapers off or stops, then just stay at home. So, you know, call my mom back, tell her, look, I've got a 2-hour window, 2 hours. So she says, okay, well, I'm still at the office. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and let me rewind. So she says, here's what we're gonna do. She tells me to go ahead and call my dad. Which they live together. So I know that the way that just came out of my mouth may sound like, you know, they're divorced, or they're not. They're still together. They live together, whatever. So she says, call your dad, let him know what's going on. Because if I cannot get home by 1:30, then he needs to leave the house and come pick you up and take you to the hospital. However, if I can get home before 1:30 and get some stuff thrown in a bag, if I can get out that door, then I can, you know, come pick you up and take you in. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So I call my dad, and of course my dad was dead to the world. My dad goes to bed like around 8 or 9, no, I wouldn't say 8 o'clock. He goes to bed around like 9 or 10 o'clock every night. So he had been asleep for a few hours by the time I called him. I call him and he's just like, hello. And I could tell he was still asleep. So I tell him what's going on. He's like, great, you're having contractions and you're bleeding. All right, call me later. And he was still asleep. You know, what am I gonna do? So, you know, I told him, well, hey, if mom can't like get home and get packed up and leave your house by like 1:30, 1:45, can you come here and take me to the house, to the hospital? Like, yeah, just let me know. It's like, all right, yeah. I hung up with him because I was like, he is never gonna remember this conversation. So anyway, hung up, and of course at that point my mind is racing. You got a little adrenaline going. You're like, yes, this is finally starting. He is finally making his way out. I'm so over this pregnancy, he just needs to get out. And yeah, I'd say about 30 minutes later, so 12:30, I wouldn't say 12:30, it was 1 a.m. Around 1 a.m., everything came to a screeching halt. Contraction stopped, bleeding was gone, like nothing. And so I call my mom and tell her, and she's like, well, I'm still gonna go home and pack a bag and come over to your house. So she did, and by the time she got to my house, it was close to 2 a.m. When she got to my house, I was already laying down in bed, and she literally like walked in, because she's got a key to my house. So she walks into the house, she comes back to my room, sees me laying in bed, she's like, what is this? What are you doing? Why are you laying down? We're going to the hospital. And I kept telling her, no, Mom, we're not. And she kept saying, well, I need to take you to the hospital. I was like, Mom, I have not had a contraction in like an hour. I'm having no contractions. All my symptoms have stopped. Well, symptoms. I'm not having contractions. The bleeding stopped. So if we walk into the hospital, like to be admitted for labor and delivery, but I'm not having contractions, they are gonna tell me to turn around and go home. So no, we're not going anywhere. She just kept saying, well, I still think I need to take you to the hospital. Like, we don't need to stay here. I just need to take you. And it took me a while to finally convince her that they're not gonna admit me if I'm not having contractions. So I go to sleep. I'm pretty sure she didn't sleep at all that night. I'm pretty sure she didn't. Because she was going to like sleep in the bed with me, but then I woke up a few hours later to go pee as usual. She wasn't in the bed with me. She was out here on this couch. I kept thinking, God, there is no way she's sleeping on that couch. So the morning of Monday the 16th rolls around. Everything's still at a halt. So I just decide, you know what, I'm just gonna take it easy today. Everything's packed, the house is ready to go. The only thing I had left to do was to change the sheets on my bed. So I got up, changed out the bed linens. I think I did a load of laundry. I took it easy. My mom pretty much, she took it easy too. And my induction was scheduled for 8 p.m. I needed to get there. They told me to get there around 7:45. So 7 o'clock rolls around, 7 p.m., and I start putting on my shoes, and literally right as I finished tying my shoes, before I could even take the first bag to the car, my cell phone rings, and it's the hospital. And they say, well, ma'am, we need you to stay home because we don't have a bed available. So we'll call you. It may be tonight that you can come in, but we may need you to wait until tomorrow. If we don't call you back by 10 p.m., then stay at home tonight. We'll call you like first thing tomorrow morning to let you know when to come in. And so when I hung up the phone, I just started bawling, because at that point I've been looking forward to this. This baby was coming. He was being induced. 8 o'clock, the end was in sight. It was in sight. And then they took the wind out of my sails. They called me an hour, no, not even an hour. They called me 45 minutes before I was supposed to arrive there for my 8 p.m. induction, and told me, stay home. We don't have a bed for you. And I was just bawling because I just wanted to be done. And my mom was like, what is going on? Who was that? why are you crying? And I'm just like, I was literally sitting here on this couch, just like, I just want him to come out. I'm done being pregnant. I don't want him to come out. Just get out. And they just called me and they told me that I can't come in tonight because I don't have a bed. How can I not have a bed? They knew I was coming tonight. These other women just need to get them out. These other women just need to have their babies and get out of my bed. And I mean, I was going on and on like this. And like, you know, I kept going on, and then finally I was just like, just get out, get out, get out, get out. Like, started screaming at my own belly. So my mom was like, okay. She was like, well, look, you haven't had anything to eat in hours because they tell you before your induction, stop eating this many hours before you come in for your induction. She was like, so you haven't had anything to eat. It looks like we're not going in tonight. Why don't I go get us something? And so I was just like, okay. I don't know what to eat. And, you know, I'm crying because I don't even know what I want to eat at this point. So she's like, why don't I go to TCBY and get us, like, some sweet treats? You know, get us some frozen yogurt. What do you want? So I tell her, get me a parfait with chocolate chip cookie dough. And yes, I know you're not supposed to eat raw cookie dough while you're pregnant. But I figured this is my last 24 hours being pregnant. It's not gonna hurt me now. And I was in a very emotional state, mind you. I was in a very, very emotional state. So, yes, sir. Are you gonna sit here and watch the baby on the monitor for me? You could care less. Anyway, so she goes to TCBY, gets the two of us parfaits. She gets back, finally. It took her what felt like forever, but I know it wasn't forever. It just felt like that way to me at that time. So she gets back, she hands me the parfait, and I take the very first bite of my parfait, and my phone rings again. And so I pick it up, and it's the hospital. At this point, it's like 8, maybe 8:30. And so it's the hospital saying, hey, we had a bed open up for you. So if you'll go ahead and just come on in as soon as you can, we'll get everything rolling. We'll get your induction going. And so all of a sudden, I was like, it was just like, yes! So I hang up, and my mom, of course, does the same thing. She's like, okay, so who's that? What's going on? Tell me about it. And so, you know, I'm telling her, well, they have a bed. They say we can go in. And I'm still sitting there, like, taking bites of my parfait, and my mom's like, great, let's get the car packed up. Give me the parfait. Like, she tries taking the parfait away from me. And I'm like, oh, hell no. And I keep shoveling it into my mouth because I'm just like, I've been eating in hours. I'm going to eat before I go in. Hell to the no. So yeah, my mom is sitting there trying to take the parfait away from me. I'm telling her no, pushing her back and trying to finish it. But, you know, I didn't finish the entire thing, but I did put down a lot of it. So I put my shoes back on, we get everything loaded back into the car, we get up there, finally, and the drive up there, you guys, we kept arguing the whole drive up there, and God love her, my pregnancy hormones were insane at that point, and I'd been through a lot within the past hour, or a lot emotionally in the past hour. So, yeah, the whole ride up there, I'm telling her, don't take that route, don't get on the interstate, just go this way. Why are you getting on the interstate? Just go this way, we'll get there faster. And she's arguing back with me. She's telling me she can't see because this road is too dark and blah, blah, blah. We finally get there and quit griping at each other. And of course we get inside. We finally get admitted. And the first thing they do, of course, is they do a rapid COVID test on me. They didn't have to do one on my mom. That was their policy at the time, was like just the person that's being admitted. It came back negative. But so I get the COVID test. They get me all hooked up. They give me a dose of Cytotec because I had not finished fully effacing, and I was only like a centimeter dilated when I walked in. So, but I had been a centimeter dilated throughout like the last couple of weeks of my pregnancy. But since I was maybe only 10% effaced the day that I walked into the hospital, they had to give me Cytotec to finish the effacement. Or that was what was told to me. Cytotec would finish the effacement and sort of jumpstart the contractions, or like sometimes they say Cytotec will jumpstart the contractions, sometimes it won't. So Cytotec to finish the effacement, maybe jumpstart the contractions. And they said after 3 or 4 doses of Cytotec, that's when they would start me on Pitocin. And I would probably start on Pitocin early the morning of the 17th. So went in the night of the 16th, started side attack. Probably the most painful thing about the initial workup, like, you know, they get you into a room, you get changed, and then the first nurse comes in and she's doing all the workup. So she does the COVID test, which, you know, technically that was the 4th time I'd been tested for COVID, so I was used to it at that point. So there's the COVID test, they get you all hooked up with the IVs and the bracelets and the monitors and everything. And then, y'all, the most painful part was when she went to put in the side attack, my cervix was so high up that she had to take these little fingers of hers, grab the cervix and pull it down. That was the most painful part. Oh, if there was ever a pain that would make you cuss, it would be that. Because I don't know how to describe it other than somebody pinching the crap out of your cervix and then pulling it down. And she was sweet. She had very small hands, so it wasn't like, I don't even know how to finish that sentence. So it wasn't that her hands were too big, it's that that's a pain that I'd never felt. And anyway, we gotta move along. So anyway, they get y'all hooked up to the monitors, the IVs, they pull your cervix down, and they inserted the very first dose of side attack, which was just a pill that dissolves, but it's got to go up in there, in your lady parts. And so, and I said, all right, this will last for about 3, maybe 4 hours. And you may feel contractions during that time, you may not. Some women do, some don't, just depends. And so, yeah, they got that going, and then they said, all right, so you can just, you know, chill. We'll come in and check on you from time to time. And I was one of those ladies who did feel contractions after getting side attack. So the first time that they came back in to check on me, they said I had effaced, you know, a little bit more. I was almost fully effaced at that point. So the side attack was doing good. And that my contractions were actually more frequent than, you know, what they expected. It wasn't a bad thing. It just meant things were going faster. Future Mary here. Hello. As I was editing this video, I got to this part and realized that I left something out. And if I didn't hop on and tell you guys about this, the rest of the story wouldn't make any kind of sense. So, nurse checks on me, tells me everything's moving faster than expected, but that's a good thing. So she says, get some rest. I'll be back in a few hours. She comes back a few hours later. At that point, I'm 2 centimeters dilated. I'm still not fully effaced, but I was a lot closer to it. She said I was like maybe 90% effaced, but she also said that since my contractions were so close together at that point, they could not give me another dose of side attack. So I'd only had 1 dose of side attack instead of 4. She said at that point, they had to move me straight to Pitocin. And that's what they did. They started me on the Pitocin. And y'all, in childbirth class, they talked about, well, they said Pitocin contractions are like worse than like a normal contraction. And they call them F and F contractions. They said that they are fast, they are furious, and you can say all the F's you need to get through them. And they were right. So they start me on Pitocin. I'm at 2 centimeters. Those contractions, like soon after they started me on Pitocin, those contractions, oh girl, those contractions, it like went from 90 to nothing, like on the pain scale. So, or nothing to 90 would probably be a better description. Although they were like, don't get me wrong, before the Pitocin, like the side attack contractions were painful. All I know is that like, they got like 10 times worse. So nurse comes in again. I'm asking like, all right, what about the epidural now? And she says, well, you know, you don't have to be at like a minimum. We don't have a minimum dilation, but you do have to be showing some like progression and like consistent progression. And my progression, so, you know, I wasn't quite there yet. She said, you know, maybe it's just a little too early. So we started talking about other pain options. To see my goal, I was going to wait until I was at least 4 centimeters dilated, preferably 6. You know, I wanted to wait until, you know, somewhere between 4 and 6 centimeters dilated to get an epidural if I needed one. Because in my mind, I was like, probably won't even need one, girl. And I settled on Stadol because she said with Stadol, if you get Stadol now, then you will still be able to get an epidural later. And what it does is it doesn't take away the pain, like it doesn't take away all the pain. It takes the edge off to where you can relax in between contractions. So I said, all right, let's go for that. You know, at that point I needed something, but I did not want to take anything that was going to prevent me from having an epidural. So I got the Stadol, and y'all, I'm glad I did, because that Stadol, it didn't just, yeah, it took the edge off, but like it relaxed me to the point where I was able to sleep. I was able to fall asleep and stay asleep for a while. And that worked for, I don't know how many hours it was, I really don't, but that worked for, you know, at least long enough for me to sleep. And when I woke up because the contractions had gotten so strong that I couldn't sleep through them, even with the Stadol. And at that point, the nurse came back in to check on me again. And she said, okay. So it looks like, and let me back up for half a second. When she came in to check on me, granted, you're sitting there with the monitor. They tell you which monitor is baby's heart rate, which monitor is the contractions. And so I was sitting there staring at the contractions one, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, if I'm reading this right, my contractions are 1 to 2 minutes apart. So they're pretty, you know, they're not back to back, but you know, they're fairly close together. And I'm having this many an hour, and they're really strong. And so if I remember correctly from my childbirth class, when they're 1 to 2 minutes apart and this strong and this many an hour, then you know, you're usually about 6 to 8 centimeters dilated. I must have really progressed. I'm thinking I'd made it at least to 6 centimeters and that I'd really progressed a lot and things were going great. At that point, she said, you are fully effaced and you're 3 centimeters dilated. And in my head, I was like, huh? Do what? 3 centimeters? Oh, no. I'm supposed to be 6 centimeters. Like, by the time that your contractions are 1 to 2 minutes apart, you're supposed to be at least 6 centimeters. Why am I not 6 centimeters? I'm only halfway there to 6 centimeters. I'm not even halfway to pushing them out, just halfway to 6. I didn't say any of that to the nurse, of course. But let me just say, all the nurses I had were like just 100% angels. Like, whoa, they're amazing. But at that point, I looked at her and was like, can I get the epidural now? She said, yeah, you've made progress. If you want the epidural, you can have it. It's like, call it in. I'm like, call that anesthesiologist, I need the epidural. So the nurse leaves to go get the epidural ordered, get that anesthesiologist here. And I would say it was maybe, I don't know if it was a full hour before the anesthesiologist came in to do the epidural. I know it was longer than 30 minutes. So the nurse leaves, my mom has to get up and go to the restroom, and I keep telling the lady I tell her she can go to the restroom in the restroom that's in my like labor and delivery suite. However, she doesn't. So she would leave my room to go down the hall and go to like the ladies' room. So she left to go to the ladies' room really quick. And while she was gone, I was laying in bed. I had just had a contraction and I was trying to relax in between like that contraction and the next one. And then all of a sudden, it felt like the popping of a champagne cork. It was all of a sudden, it was just like pop. And then right after that pop was a massive gush of water. So my water broke. I was lying in bed and it broke. I didn't feel it coming. So some people say, oh, I knew it was about to break. Like, I didn't feel it coming. It was just like, you know, I was laying in bed, I had my eyes closed, then all of a sudden I opened my eyes, and like literally the second that I opened my eyes, and I don't know why, but it felt like something was about to happen, but I didn't know what. And so I, you know, opened my eyes, and right as I opened my eyes is when that little champagne cork feeling like pop happened. And y'all, I did not realize exactly how much amniotic fluid was up in there. Holy cow, that was a lot. It felt like an ocean. I had an ocean of water on the bed and all over me. And the thing is in childbirth class, you learn about like, you know, there's a couple of different ways that your water can break. There is the big gush, like what I just described, but then there's also what they call the high leak, to where when your water breaks, like instead of like it breaking down here at the bottom, like you have like a little tear right up in the top. And so you get like this slow little trickle of amniotic fluid coming from the top and coming down. And yeah, in the class they were talking about, you know, when it's a high leak, sometimes women are like, is that amniotic fluid? Is that pee coming out of me? Like, what is that? And so in my mind, I was thinking, am I actually gonna know when my water breaks? Oh, buddy, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You will know when your water breaks because the floodgates open and there's just a massive amount of fluid. You know that there is no way that your bladder could have been holding that much fluid because you haven't been able to hold that much fluid in your bladder for months. So, or if ever, to tell you the truth, I don't think my bladder is big enough to ever have held that much fluid in it. But anyway, so I'm sitting there in the room by myself. My mom comes back in from using the ladies' room. She's like, what's going on? What's that look on your face? I was like, my water broke. Oh my God, my water broke. And so I called the nurse's station to let them know, and they said, all right, well, granted, when you call the nurse's station, they've got just one person, like an operator sitting there. And so the lady says, all right, I'll let your nurse know. And maybe 10, 15 minutes went by and she still had not come in. And so finally my mom got tired of waiting. So my mom went out into the hallway and found the nurse and was like, her water broke. And the nurse was like, why didn't you tell us? My mom was like, she did buzz you. So nurse finally gets in. And the thing is, when they hook you up to all these IVs and monitors, you cannot get in and out of bed by yourself. Like they tell you, if you need to go to the bathroom, just buzz us, let me know. I'll come in and help you get to the bathroom. So, so yeah, she finally comes in, or else I would have gotten out of bed sooner than that. I would not have sat in that for as long as I did. So she finally comes in. I get out of bed because they got to change linens, and at that point I had a pee too. So I get out of bed, and when I got out of bed, I did not turn around and look at my amniotic fluid. Like I never looked down to see what color it was or what it looked like. I just got out of bed. I went to the bathroom, I peed, did not look at it in there either. And it wasn't that I was scared, I just didn't think to turn around and look at my own amniotic fluid. So yeah, I get back, by the time I got out, well, I had to change too, because I was covered, you know. By the time I get out and back into a nice, clean, fresh bed, you know, I'd lay down, and it wasn't long after that when the anesthesiologist came in to do the epidural. And I do not know who it was that invented the epidural, but whoever it was, thank you. So you get your epidural in, and y'all, in case you're watching this and you're pregnant and you're just wondering what an epidural feels like, or you're thinking about getting pregnant and you just want to know this beforehand, getting the epidural, well, first, just know that they numb you up so that you don't feel that needle going into your back. I did not even see the needle, by the way, and that was fine with me. My mom stayed in the room, but like she stayed like sort of over in a corner. So, you know, I didn't see her. She didn't see the needle. So they numb you up so that you don't feel it going in. But what it feels like is it feels like hitting your funny bone. You know that weird feeling you get when you hit your funny bone? That's what it feels like, but that feeling, instead of being in your arm, it's in your back. So it's like hitting your funny bone, but that feeling's going up your spine. But as weird as that felt, because I mean, they drape you over a nurse and they tell you when to breathe and when to do this and when to do that. But you know, after it goes in, it felt weird going in, and it felt weird having to be taped up my back. But 15 minutes later, when it kicks in, when it's fully kicked in, and you're having a contraction, and the only way you know that you're having a contraction is by looking at it on the monitor because you don't feel it. Oh, that is just the best moment. Like, you do not care what it felt like going in when you don't feel that contraction. So they get it in, and while the anesthesiologist is putting it in, like, he sees my tattoo. I've got a tramp stamp. But yeah, I've got the New York Yankees logo tattooed on my back. That was my college graduation present to myself. Y'all, I was 22, so whatever. But he sees my tattoo. He's like, oh, let's see, we have a New York Yankees fan. I said, my brother works in the front office of the New York Mets. It's like, okay. So Anyway, I get the epidural, I get in bed, everything feels great. But once you get that epidural, your legs are heavy, like they're so heavy that you can't move them. So, I mean, I still had a little bit of feeling like in my toes, but you know, you can't really walk after you have an epidural. So they have to come in and put a catheter in you. And let me tell you, you don't feel that catheter going in. Like, you don't feel anything. So I didn't feel it going in. And it meant that I didn't have to get out of bed to go to the bathroom, or I didn't have to worry about using the bedpan either. So the epidural's in, the catheter's in, I don't have to get out of bed. The nurse leaves, and my mom and I are just left in the room. She finally falls asleep on the couch, and I'm feeling good, so I lay back and start to close my eyes, and not even 2 minutes later, the nurse comes rushing back into the room. And she says that the baby's heartbeat has jumped, it skyrocketed. So she makes me flip sides. And y'all, do you know how difficult it is to like go from one side to the other when you can't use your legs? So that was interesting. So I get flipped over. I was on my right side, they flipped me over to my left, and it helped a little bit. And so the nurse said, all right, he seems to be doing better now. So she left the room again. Y'all, it was only a few minutes later before she came right back into that room saying that his heart rate had jumped up again. So this time she did flip me. Well, God love that woman. She was not big enough to flip me on her own. We worked together and got me off of my left side. This time I went on my back, and they cut off the Pitocin altogether just to see, is it the Pitocin that is causing this? So they cut off the Pitocin altogether, and his heart rate went right back to normal. So they left me off of Pitocin for a little while just to see if I would continue having contractions and continue progressing. And I didn't, man. Everything like came to a screeching halt when they turned off that Pitocin. My contractions stopped, my dilation stopped, everything stopped. So once it became clear that I wasn't going to progress without the Pitocin, I said, all right, let's try this again. And so they turned the Pitocin back on to see if, you know, if he had settled down enough for me to be able to continue. And so they turned it back on, and he did the same thing. His heart rate went right back up. So they turned the Pitocin off again, and his heart rate went back to normal, but my labor came to a screeching halt. So they tried it one more time. So they turned on the Pitocin one more time. Same thing happened. Heart rate went right back up. And so at this point, we'd done Pitocin a couple of times, or we tried turning it off and on a couple of times. At this point, there were actually 2 nurses in my room because they were doing the shift change. But one of the nurses said, okay, his heart rate keeps going up every time we turn it on, and she has meconium in her amniotic fluid. Y'all, I did not know I had meconium in my amniotic fluid because I didn't look at anything when my water broke. I didn't think to. And if you don't know what meconium is your baby's first stool. So basically he had his very first bowel movement while he was still inside of me. That little shit. So, and that was the big joke, okay? Like, my kid is not really a little shit. So, I remember texting my dad that, just jokingly saying, like, a little shit took his first crap inside of me. So, anyway, now that I've said that about 1,000 times, and I'm pretty sure my video is gonna get flagged, so I didn't know that there was meconium, that had happened until then. And of course, my mind goes right back to childbirth class. Because in childbirth class, they tell you, like, when your water breaks, sit down, note the time, call the doctor, take a look at what color it is, because if it's green, then, it means meconium, and meconium means all of these things, or it could mean any of these things. And so I didn't even think about that because I was already in the hospital, so there was no need to note the time or to call the doctor or do any of that. So yeah, this is the first time I'm hearing that there's meconium, and I go back to childbirth class, and I'm thinking, all right, well, they said meconium can happen for a couple of different reasons. It can happen if the baby is breech, which he was not. We know that he was head down facing the exit. He just had not dropped. So if the baby was breech, meconium can happen if the baby is like overdue, like way late. And I was induced on my due date, so he wasn't super late. I mean, he was pretty much on time, or he was being induced on time. Y'all, if I did not do the induction, he would probably still be up in there because he was way too comfortable where he was at. So I knew it wasn't that he was breech. I knew that it wasn't because he was super late. The other reason that I could remember was fetal distress. And I'm sure that there's might be another reason or two for meconium out there, and that door is opening because there's a cat back there. I do not have a ghost. So yeah, there's totally a cat in that closet. So yeah, I'm thinking, oh God, fetal distress. Well, his heart does keep jumping around. Oh my God, is my kid in distress? So at that point, I heard the nurses talking amongst themselves saying, well, the heart rate is like, you know, jumps up every time we turn on the Pitocin, and there's meconium. So I'm gonna go talk to the doctor who's on call. And the on-call doctor just so happened to be my OBGYN. So they said, all right, we're gonna go talk to her, see what she wants to do. And then they come back. So yeah, that nurse leaves, she comes back. And she says, so here's the deal. You know, at this point, the doctor is recommending a C-section just because, you know, we're seeing signs of distress. He is still okay. He seems to be still okay. So it's not an emergency situation now. But if we leave him in there much longer, it could turn into an emergency situation with the heart rate and the fact that he's swimming around in his own poop. So, you know, we're thinking, you know, if you agree to it, we're thinking, let's go ahead and do a C-section now just to get him out before it becomes an emergency situation. So I said yes. And here's the deal. When I talked to my doctor before even having this induction, like before going into the hospital, when we were back in the office and she was asking me for my birth plan, I told her, I said, look, I would like to push him out. I would like to have a vaginal delivery, but like, you know, if we get into it and push comes to shove and it looks like the best route would be to go ahead and do a C-section just for the sake of the baby and the sake of me, then, you know, I'll do that. You're not gonna get a fight. I'm not gonna put up a fight, because I know some people will bargain for like a couple of extra hours, or let's see if my body can do this, or let's see if, I said, I'm not gonna bargain, I'm not gonna fight. I will be right there with you and say, all right, let's go. Because the way that I think about it is I think it doesn't matter how he got here, just as long as he got here safely. And I mean, that was my thought going into it. I was gonna stay open-minded. I was not going to get upset if I did not get the vaginal delivery that I wanted. And man, when it happened though, because when I said all that, like that's how I was feeling beforehand, but man, when push came to shove and I had to put my money where my mouth was, I wasn't, how do I put this? Like I wasn't teary-eyed or, you know, I wasn't just like, oh no, I wasn't depressed. So I wasn't all like super disappointed or upset. But yeah, when they told me I had to have a C-section, I started thinking, holy crap, this recovery is gonna be bad. So they tell me I need a C-section. And then the doctor comes in a little bit later and we talk about it, and she says, girl, your body was, I thought you were really gonna be able to push him out because your body was doing what it needed to do. Your water broke on its own, the contractions were going, you know, but she said the thing is that he appears to be in some distress. And, you know, she just reiterated what the nurse said. She said, you know, if you were like maybe 9 or 10 centimeters dilated, we would go ahead and let you push. But at this point, because she checked me again, she said at this point, you're only 4 centimeters and it's gonna take several more hours for you to get from 4 to pushing him out at 9 or 10. And I just don't feel comfortable leaving him in there for several more hours because of the meconium, because of his heart rate that seems to be erratic. So let's just go ahead and get him out before it becomes an emergency situation. So, you know, I was on board with that. And I told her, I said, look, I'm gonna keep my word. I told you I would be, you know, I'd be on board, I'd be game for that. and I'm gonna keep my word and I'm just gonna do it, you know? And the nurses afterward actually told me I was the most easygoing patient that they had. I was like, well, I was kind of freaking out a little bit in my mind, but you know, apparently that part I did hide well. So that was around 10:30. They said that they were going to go ahead and get me back there for the C-section at 11, but things did get backed up. I didn't end up going back for the C-section until noon. They roll me into the ER, girl. They roll me into the OR, and when they get me in there, they say, look, we're gonna put you on a roll board, and we're gonna roll you on to the operating table. It's gonna feel like you were gonna fall face first on this floor, but just know you're not. We've got you. We've done this about 1,000 times already today. So don't freak out. So they put me on this roll board, and it felt like just that. Like, you know, they have to roll you this way so that they can roll you back the other way to get you on the operating table. And yeah, you do feel like you're gonna face plant into the floor, because literally, like, it happened so fast, and then the next thing you know, you're seeing the floor, and you're like, holy shit, I'm gonna fall, I'm gonna fall, I'm gonna fall. But you don't. I promise you did. Even big girls like me do not fall. So, I mean, those people, they have to have very strong back muscles because this big girl did not hit the floor. So they get me on the OR table. And of course, they did that thing where they strap both of your arms out to where you feel like you're being crucified. And the weirdest thing happened, you guys. I've never had bouts of anxiety. I've never had an anxiety attack. So I didn't really know what one felt like. And so when they upped my epidural, when they put that extra medicine in me, so that I wouldn't feel anything, they told me beforehand, your chest may feel a little heavier. Let us know if it feels so heavy that you can't breathe. And so that's what happened though. Like, it felt a little heavier, but not so heavy that I couldn't breathe. But the minute that it felt a little heavier, I started breathing heavier. And in my mind, I started panicking. And I don't know what it was. Like, I've usually, y'all, I've had 3 surgeries in the past. I'm not scared of an OR. I'm not scared of being put under. And so it was the same thing with the C-section. It was like, I know I'm not gonna die from this. I know, like, I'm gonna come right out of this. But I'm not even being put to sleep this time. So, but I will say this was the very first time that I'd ever had surgery while staying awake. So I wonder if that had something to do with it, but I started freaking out. Like, all of a sudden it was like, you know, can't breathe. Oh my God, I'm freaking out. They're about to cut me open, like major surgery. And oh my God, and I was like just freaking out. And I can't even pinpoint what I was freaking out about, because I knew that a C-section was major abdominal surgery. And I knew that my chest would feel a little heavier, but there was something else deeper, is what I'm trying to say, deeper down, that was causing me just to freak out. And I started breathing heavier, and the anesthesiologist like noticed that, and he's like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And I was like, I'm fine, I'm okay. And you know, again, I was trying to play it off as if I was fine, but I don't think I played it off very well at all. And so, anyway, he got me talking about something else. Like, this anesthesiologist that I had was really just the nicest person. And my mom took a picture of the 2 of us in the OR together afterward. So my mom's in there with me. And the anesthesiologist gets me talking about something else. And so I calmed down. But the whole time, like, I was pretty nervous this whole time. Like, really nervous. And before they started working on me, my OBGYN noticed my socks. So I got these socks, and I'll insert a picture of it. I bought these socks that say ready, set, push. And I don't know, you can probably see it on this picture. But I thought, oh, this will be the cutest thing. I'll have ready, set, push socks for when I push them out. Yeah, I'm in the OR, and my OBGYN sees it. She's like, well, you're not really gonna push them out, but we'll do the pushing for you. She's like, those socks are cute though. It's like, oh girl, best laid plans. So I get to talking to the anesthesiologist, and I'm like, well, I don't feel anything. And he was like, well, that's a good thing, because they've already started. Like, they've already opened you up, so that's a good thing. So yeah, so I mean, it really didn't take that long. Like, once they opened me up, now he wasn't like pulled out right away. Since he had the meconium, they don't want, since he's floating in his own poop, they don't want his first breath to happen right away. They want to get in there and suction first so that he does not inhale his own poop into his lungs. So what they essentially did was they pulled out his head first, and while he was still, like, the rest of his body was still in the rest of my body, they suctioned out like his mouth, his lungs, his nose. And then they pulled the rest of him out. And so when they pulled him out, granted, you feel them pushing, because like I said, one doctor is pulling while the other one is pushing. So you feel them pulling him out, you feel the pushing, but like, it doesn't hurt. So if you have a scheduled C-section, just know you're not gonna feel pain. You're gonna feel pushing and pulling, which may freak you out a bit. It freaked me out, okay? And like I said, it might be because this was the very first surgery I had while I was away. But they pull him out, and they suctioned him out some more right after they pulled him out, but he didn't really make a whole lot of noise. And so I'm sitting there like, why is my baby not making any noise? Like, he is so quiet. Like, what's going on? I wasn't immediately thinking anything sinister. I was just like, what's going on? And I could hear the doctor talking to him. Like, she was like, well, hey, little man, like, you know, what's going on? Are you going to talk to us? Are you going to give us a little noise? And I heard a little smacking. Now, granted, I can't see anything. My mom was looking, because she was able to look, and so she said the doctor wasn't like smacking on his butt or anything. She was smacking the bottom of his feet. And after she smacked the bottom of his feet a couple of times, all of a sudden he let out a real big scream. That boy was loud, and it really does take your breath away the first time that you hear your child. Makes your heart skip a beat. And so I started crying a little bit. I did not cry as much as I thought I was going to cry, but yes, I did let out tears just because I was so happy that he was okay. And at that point, my mom was able to like go over to the warmer with him, because they took him over to a warmer where they suctioned out his mouth and his nose and his lungs a little more. They cleaned, they got him wiped down, they cleaned him up. They brought him over and showed him to me, so I got to see him. But since I was lying down, I really could not like get a good look at him. So my mom's over there at the warmer, and she's telling me, Mary, he's got a head full of wavy hair. And she says, he she's like, kind of looks like you. I think he has blue eyes, but I can't tell. And so she came back over to me, because I mean, there's not much she could do. Like, they needed to finish working on him, like doing whatever they were doing. And so she came back over to me, and then maybe a few minutes later, they brought the baby to my mom. And so my mom got to hold him while they were sewing me back together. And so I'm glad that she got that time with him. She was holding him right over there next to me, so she was trying to show him to me. But again, like, I really couldn't see much because, you're laying down, she's standing up. So really, I got a really good look at his feet. He was born, he had some big feet when he was born. He's always had big feet, but got a good look at his feet. And, he looked a little weird at first, because all babies do. He was a little puffy in the face, simply because they give you 2 bags of saline when they first admit you. So I was swollen, he was swollen. And also think about it, like, when you push them out, they come out of your birth canal, and when they're in the birth canal, like, they get squeezed, so a bunch of that stuff gets squeezed right on out of them. But when they're born via C-section, none of that stuff gets squeezed right on out of them. So yeah, and all babies also, like, they're a little like bluish at first, like they pink up, but so his coloring was a tad off. But I mean, he aced his APGAR, so I mean, everything was normal for him. I just did not realize like what he was gonna, like, how bluish he was gonna look for a quick minute, until he pinked up. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie, like, during that part, I was sort of in and out of it, like, not in and out of consciousness, but it was all kind of blurry because of A, the medicine, B, everything else that was going on, C, the hormones my body had just released. So, I mean, it was sort of in and out of it. After they sewed me up, and after they wheeled me, like, they wheel you to like a recovery room for just a little while, and I think I was in the recovery room for like maybe an hour or 2. But they wheeled me into that recovery room. At that point, I was really drowsy, and so this lactation consultant came in and said, do you want to go ahead and breastfeed now? Because when I get into that room, they put him on top of me, and he is rooting around like crazy. And y'all, I kept thinking, like, God, he's moving his head around a lot for a newborn. I didn't think newborns could move their heads around like this much, but my kid was going for it. And at that point, he was rooting around a little bit, but not that much. And I was so out of it. I was like, no, just come back later. And then not even 5 minutes later, I was telling the nurse in the recovery room, can you go get that lactation consultant for me? So they brought her back in. We got him latched on. And, you know, I breastfed for a little while. And then he was done. Yeah, but, you know, babies at that age, like those newborns, their stomachs are so small that they don't really need that much. So he fell asleep, and he fell asleep like on top of me, and that was just the best feeling in the world when you have your newborn in there with you and they're sleeping on top of you. Oh my God, nothing beats that. And, you know, eventually I tried to move him so my mom could see him too, like so she could see his face. But let me tell you, then he assumed this position. I'm gonna insert this picture. And like, we took so many pictures of him doing this because it's like, oh my God, like the look on his face, or his little expression, because you can't see his face, but his body language is just saying like, am I really related to these people? Oh my God, ladies, quit taking pictures of me. That's it, I'm done. So anyway, so yeah, he had to come by C-section. It wasn't my preferred method of choice, but you know, like I said, I don't regret it. It was a rougher recovery. If I had to do it all over again, I would try to do it vaginally. Well, let me rephrase that. If I had my choice and nothing was wrong with him, I would go for a vaginal delivery. If I had to do it all over again and he was still in distress, I would still pick the C-section. Just, you know, when your baby's in distress, you'll do whatever you have to do, you know? And for me, it was like, I would gladly cut myself open just to keep him like alive, just to keep him safe, to keep him from becoming an emergency situation. So, you know, you do whatever you have to do for your kids. But yeah, he got here one way or the other. He got here, and he is still asleep, but I'll tell you what, I will take you into the nursery so you guys can see him, sort of introduce him to you. You'll see him in other videos. One moment. Well, I was just gonna take you into the nursery and show him to you, but little man woke up, and as you can tell, he's got old man hair. Yes, you do. You have old man hair. You have old man hair. So let me introduce you guys to my son. This little hoss is James Matthew. Say, hey, James Matthew. Are you waving? Are you seriously waving? So I named him James Matthew. If you watched my baby name video, then you'll remember that I was planning on going with family names, and so that's what I did. I named him James after my dad, Matthew after my late brother, and oh, I should say, there are actually a lot of men in my family named James. So there's my dad, his father, so my dad, my grandfather, my great-grandfather. I actually have two great-grandfathers named James. I have a great-uncle named James. My mom's brother, so my uncle, his middle name is James. Trying to think, my mom has a cousin named Jimmy, well, James, but they called him Jimmy. I've got a cousin whose middle name is James, Tyler James. And then I have two cousins who, they had babies and they named their baby. Well, they used James as a middle name for their babies. There's Aiden James and Eleanor James. So, yeah, you yawning. Are you tired? You literally just woke up. Look at this belly. So, yeah, James is a big name in our family. But he's going to go by Jamie because we've had a Jim, Jimmy, James. We've had a James Wayne who went by Wayne. A Tyler James who went by TJ. So, so yeah, this one is, we've never had a Jamie, so this one's gonna be Jamie. Yes, you Jamie. He was, I will say, when he was born, he was 7 pounds and 9 ounces and 20 inches long. And he is now 11 weeks old, so he was not this big when he was born. No, you weren't. You're just a little horse, so he is now over 13 pounds and he is a little over 24 inches long. So, and pediatrician says that he is perfectly proportionate because he is for Height, he is in the 67th percentile, and for weight, he is in the 67th percentile. So he's proportioned just perfectly. Unlike your mama. Mama was short and chubby. Mama still is short and chubby. Anyway, so thanks for hanging in there for yet another video. I am going to go ahead and end this video so I can get him fed before he starts screaming, little Mr. Brown Eyes. So anyway, thanks for hanging in there for yet another video. You will see him in more videos, I promise you that. Oh goodness. And I know I've got more that I plan on making, or there's some y'all that I just need to edit. So I am not gonna lie. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking because this video is already long enough, and we will see you guys next time. Say bye. Can you say bye, or are you just gonna punch me in the face? Say bye. All right, bye.